And the sound system never works. Is my voice clear?
Yes, yes.
I'll be brief. When I heard it was the 20th disappearance, I was very surprised when I read it in the invitation. 20 years went by pretty quickly, huh? Tamal Krishna Maharaj is a name, I think, that every devotee, no matter what generation, Prabhupada's disciples, grand disciples, etc., which is known by everyone. Is there anyone who doesn't know the name Tamal Krishna Goswami? I doubt it. He's very well known. Prabhupada once wrote me a letter, many, many years ago, of course, and one of the things he said was that real fame, F-A-M-E, to really be famous is to be known, is to be famed as a devotee of the Lord. That's real fame. So I was thinking that Tamal Krishna Maharaj very well fits that category. He was like famous from the time he joined practically, you know. And he was, of course, very intimately connected with Srila Prabhupada. And I had the good fortune to work with him in India. I'm not going to go through the whole history. But, and the last 6 months of Prabhupada's life, along with him, except for the trip to London, as personally serving Srila Prabhupada together with him, was a very wonderful experience. So, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, also there's one, when Nrsimha Maharaj told a story about Tamal's sannyas, there was one story Tamal told me many years ago, that when they were going in Jaipur to the Radha Govinda temple, him and Prabhupada rode in a rickshaw together to go for Tamal taking sannyas. And as they were on the road in the rickshaw, then a wedding party, a Rajasthani wedding party, was coming up the road. And with, drums and trumpets and everything. A wedding party. And here's Tamal Krishna sitting with Prabhupada in a rickshaw, going to take sannyas. So Prabhupada looked at Tamal in the rickshaw and said that, see the wedding party, the groom and the bride and the relatives, they will celebrate the marriage. Hello? They will celebrate the marriage. But we brahmacharis and sannyasis, we will also celebrate their marriage by taking the feast, taking prasadam. The groom and bride get married, and the rest of their life they have to put up with it. But the sannyasis and brahmacharis, they take the feast and go away. So, I have a very special relation. Every few months, he's the only one of my god brothers who has left this world, who I feel so intimately connected with, in the sense, every few months, I have a dream about Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And just last week I had a dream. I'm not going to go into it, but we stay, somehow or other we stay connected, where we come from the same neighborhood in New York City, very close by. He was in Harlem, just at the beginning of Harlem, and I was in the Bronx, about 40 streets away. We didn't know each other personally at that time. But in Mayapur, we always used to get together, and we knew all the same New York history, all the names of the street gangs. There's all kinds of gangs. The Fordham Baldies. The Fordham Baldies were blacks who used to wear ladies' stockings on their head and tie razor blades. So when they fight, they could use the headbutt. And sometimes even your school, I went to a public school, you weren't allowed to go out because they said the Fordham Baldies are there. So we used to laugh and laugh and laugh, and we used to meet in his room in the Conch building, and me, him, and sometimes Gurukul Maharaj, because we all came from the same community. Like the Italians were mafia, we had another community. And Tamal Krishna used to have his disciples make bagels and cream cheese. Do you know what a bagel is? Do the Chinese devotees know what a bagel is? No. 50% of your life is wasted. You have to learn. Your guru very much liked bagels. It was a Jewish preparation, bagels and cream cheese. And because the Jews, they used to have a type of fish, it was called lox. Bagels, cream cheese, and lox. So Tamal Krishna, being a perfect manager, as Maharaj described, he made bergoon, eggplant, and pickled it so that it tasted a little fishy. And when we used to go in his room, we used to make the bagels, cream cheese, and put that eggplant, pickled eggplant, and it was a recreation, legitimate, of old community food. So, all glories to Srila Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He was a great, great friend of mine personally. We served Prabhupada together personally, and we fought in the court together. In the High Court of Bombay, we fought with Prabhupada's eldest son, Mathura Mohan Dey. And Tamal and I used to live in the same room on the top floor of the Bombay guest house, and we used to practice. I would be the prosecutor, and he was the chief witness, Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And so I used to ask him, because in the court, the lawyer for the other side used to say, I put it to you, Tamal Krishna Goswami, I put it to you, that your guru was not corpus mentis. He wasn't in his right mind when he signed his will. So all these accusations used to come, and we used to practice that. And one day in the court, I used to sit in the front row, and Tamal Krishna was the chief witness, and the judge was he was a Parsi judge, a very honest judge. And they used to attack Tamal, the M.M. Dey's lawyer. And so one day in the court, Tamal Krishna forgot the answer that we practiced. And so I was in the first row. He was looking at me from the witness stand. And I couldn't speak because the judge was there in the whole court, but I started to lip sync. I went like that, and he's going. And then suddenly the judge slammed his gavel, his hammer, boom, on his desk, and said, and looked at me and said, "One more time you do that, I'll have you taken away and put in jail for contempt." Then I was, so we shared a lot of moments, and I'll just tell one last thing. In the court, in the benches, there was a lot of Bengal tigers. You know Bengal tigers? Bengali Bob. Mane, they're little bed bugs in the bench of the court, and they would bite you in your backside. Then one day when we were coming from Juhu to attend the court, Tamal Krishna Maharaj told me, "I've solved the biggest problem." I said, "What?" He said, and I'll tell you when we sit in the bench. When we sat on the bench, the court files with all the papers, we put it under our backsides, and then the bed bugs couldn't bite through. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj came up with a wonderful solution. He was always coming up with solutions. Anyway, all glories to Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. And now, we'd like to invite Panchana.
Hare Krishna. Hari Hari. Jai Shri Prabhupada. I just welcome our God's brothers here, also Ghosh Prabhu, and it looks like Dinabandha Prabhu, and Padmanabha Goswami. Hare Krishna. What a great pleasure. You have a lot to say about Tamal Krishna Goswami. Hare Krishna. And I think Janani Prabhu has also joined us. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Bhakti Vigyavanashana Nrsimha Maharaj reminded us of the time that Tamal Krishna Maharaj came to New York. And I was there. And so I wanted to experience firsthand Tamal Krishna Maharaj's power, the power of his association. As was mentioned, he and Vishnu Jan Maharaj had a friendship that went back to their time together before meeting Srila Prabhupada. And as was mentioned, Vishnu Jan Maharaj was a Pied Piper. His musical ability was so wonderful. He would, I didn't know he was a guitar, but you could see his esraj. He played the esraj, like it was just heavenly sound. And so I went from New York to Cambridge, where they were camped out. And first of all, got the experience of their kirtan and the mesmerizing kirtan that they had. But then this next phase, as was mentioned, that they had a strategy. So they had a strategy of course, first of all, attract. You have to attract people. So you attract people by this beautiful kirtan. Then next step is it's like a funnel. And I don't know if Maharaj just studied sales, or perhaps some of you have, and you know about the sales funnel. How you at the top of the funnel you have a lot of people, but then you have to bring them down in stages. So the next stage was to bring people to the Sunday feast, at least this time. In the college programs, it would mean to bring them to the bus. But in Boston, it meant to bring them to the Sunday feast. So I stayed for that also. And there I witnessed the third stage, the closing. And this was Tamal Krishna Maharaj's expertise, how to close the deal. So if you're in sales, you also may know that you have to get to yes. There's never an opportunity to say no. You cannot give a question that a person can say no to. You have to always make a question that they can only say yes to. And then after they've said yes to every single question, then you give them the real final question, and they're already saying yes, and they gotta say yes. So he had this technique of being able to point out different things that you had to say yes to. Like, are you really happy in this material world? Is it true that you're not always happy? Yeah, I guess so. That's true. Is it true that your body's going to die eventually? Yeah, I guess that's true. Is it? Don't you find that all the relationships that we have in the material world, they always seem to end up in some sort of suffering? Yeah, I guess that's so. Like this, yes. Okay, then why are you staying here? Why don't you come with us? Yes. So that was their wonderful strategy. We had I was not so close like Shadidami to have so much association with Maharaj. But all the different times that we did associate were lessons. Each one of them had a lesson. The way he would eat was a lesson. He knew the power of prasadam. But he was particular about how it was served, what order you ate. If you served something in the wrong order, and you gave the fried one before the bitter, right? Then go back. Call the person in charge. I want to talk to them. And they got an earful. He was very particular. And I was thinking about the qualities that Maharaj had. He had this special ability to simultaneously be your best friend and your most honest critic. He never held back when he saw something amiss. But you didn't feel, most of the time, some of the time you might have felt, what's going on. But at least I was fortunate to when I received some critique from Maharaj, I always felt it came from a place of kindness and love. I know some people had other experiences, but we won't talk about that. But at least for me, it was like that. We always had that, because our relationship, we never worked together in a kind of, my boss. He was never my boss. He was never, my authority in any sphere. So we had more of a negotiation type of relationship when it came to service. Like in New York, he came perhaps the last time that I interacted. He came and we had moved into the 55th Street Temple, and he was there. But instead of, because at the time he had a reputation in America for just going, and then the Radha Damodar party would pull up to a temple, and everyone would say Hari Bol, and they had wonderful, wonderful kirtans, and then the next morning the temple president would wake up and come to Mangalarti, and there was 4 or 5 brahmacharis that were just gone in the night. They had gotten on the bus and they were gone. But fortunately, we had more of a negotiation. So he had somebody that needed to stay in the temple, and we had people that needed to go out, and we traded like that. So that was the old days of ISKCON, trading. The devotees would be traded, not like slaves, but different. Anyway, so we had that kind of relationship. But thinking back on the qualities, I was thinking that there was this combination of attention, focus, ability to really look at everything very carefully, and at the same time, broad vision, innovation, thinking out of the box, being creative, being able to simultaneously do everything in the way it should be done, with discipline, and at the same time have the creative ability to do all the kinds of things that he did, all the kinds of creative preaching that he did. The final thing I'd like to talk about, because this is an indication of his, because he was a visionary. He had vision. Srila Prabhupada inspired him to think, like somebody you would say, think big, right? So he also had that thought, think big. But at the same time, he had that ability to understand how to think big. It's not just a matter of dreaming. You also have to have ability to make a strategy that will actually accomplish your dreams. Otherwise, you're stuck in the dream world. And he had that. Not just the dream, but the strategies and the ability to get there. So I pray that in our own service, we may also get those qualities. We come here on these occasions to remember and glorify devotees for their contributions and their qualities. And in my case, with the hope and the prayer that I may also learn and develop those same qualities so I can also serve Srila Prabhupada in some way in this life. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai.
His Grace Pancharatna Prabhu ki jai. Thank you very much, Ji, to say afterwards. And I would like to also welcome those new arrival guests who is Dinabandhu Prabhuji and His Grace Janinivas Prabhuji. With His Grace Vasudeva Prabhuji.
Mukham karidi bacharam mangaladevim jakkapatamaham Shamadeta Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. 20 years since that moment when Sridhar Maharaj, before Guru Puja, grabbed the microphone and announced to us in the temple that HHTamalKrishna Maharaj has left. I remember that day, everything stopped. We were teaching in the Mayapur Institute many courses, maybe there was 20 different courses going on, Janmashtami Prabhu, there were so many, he was so enthusiastic to have courses. Everything stopped. It was during festival this time. Everything stopped. And I remember Bhakti Goswami Maharaj in the temple, sitting, his face was like sitting under a cloud. So now Bhakti Goswami Maharaj is also with us here today. And for 3 days, everybody spoke. Everybody came together in the temple and shared their affection and their feelings at Maharaj's sudden departure. Gurudev, sometimes he said, I will be the first in the Samadhi amongst my god brothers, and his, when we come to the Vaishnav Samadhis, first we take dust from the lotus feet of Tamal Krishna Goswami. And 20 years. And I sometimes reflect, well, if Gurudev was still here, I think it would be different. We missed him. It's such a tremendous loss for our movement. In Mayapur, we're developing everything. We miss Gurudev's input and association. I'm sure that things would have been spectacular had he been with us now. Not that they're not spectacular, but his influence, his association was so important for the movement. Today is Servant of the Servant is showcased, and last night I was going through and reading different things. That story that Bhaktivedanta Narasimha told about going to New York from Florida and he had the 4 tickets. He already bought the tickets to take such a visionary, such an empowered preacher. And I was reading that, and I was reading about when, as Bhaktivedanta Narasimha mentioned, that it was hearing about the preaching, hearing about the book distribution in America that Gurudev desired. He wanted to go back. He wanted, of course, the cutting edge of the preaching was where Tamal Krishna Maharaj was in the early years, LA, San Francisco. The first Sankirtan parties, he went and bought turtleneck yellow sweaters for all the men and dressed them up, had them all, and inspected them. Before that, he was doing a job, bringing money, and then Prabhupada said, so just chant, go and chant, and you can collect it. He organized, immediately he took the responsibility of organizing the preaching. We can say that he came in this life to help Prabhupada organize the Sankirtan mission all over the world. And he had such capacity to lead, spiritual leadership. So then he went to Europe, London, started off the preaching in London, the Beatles, and then Germany, Paris, all of the cutting-edge preaching fields. He was there serving Prabhupada. And then came to India, and took sannyas. So then, hearing about, actually, His Holiness Jagataku Samiraj, whether he comes or not, that oftentimes he visits this festival, he says that he has the record of being Tamal Krishna Maharaj, GBC for India. Srila Jagataku Swami Maharaj mentions that he has the record. He was removed from temple president position 10 times, Kolkata, and reinstated, removed by the GBC 10 times from the position of president. And he says that he was given the service of president of Kolkata 11 times by Prabhupada. So I wanted to share this incident of Gurudev leaving India and going back to the States for preaching, and then Prabhupada came. And he was expecting that Prabhupada will say, what about the GBC, the leadership in India? Projects are developing there. We want you there in India. So I'll share a paragraph or two from Servant of the Servant. Prabhupada speaking, so, them privately in Prabhupada's room. So, are you ready to return and once again take up the management as the GBC in India? Prabhupada gravely inquired, changing the subject. Immediately he brought up that topic. It was just as I had feared, Gurudev is writing. It was just as I had feared. I wanted to be submissive and yet truthful in my answer. I would rather remain in America. I think that I should preach now, I offered suggestively. And Prabhupada's response, that's all right for you to stay, but do you think that I can give up management so easily? No. No, I meekly responded. No, I cannot, but you will. Prabhupada was visibly displeased with my unwillingness to accept his proposal. Although he had not made it an order, his desire was clear. But the preaching here is very good, Srila Prabhupada. I wanted to explain myself rather than pose arguments. Preaching means results, Prabhupada responded abruptly. He didn't seem ready to entertain any further explanation. His mood was decisively firm. I felt in a quandary whether or not to say anything more. Remaining silent, returning to India, remain silent, return to India. Bhaktivedanta Narasimha Maharaj was mentioning the importance of preaching in India. Of course, Srila Gurudev is such a transcendentally intelligent, superior intelligence, transcendental. He had already, we could say that he was anticipating Prabhupada. He was anticipating Prabhupada's behavior and Prabhupada's desire. And he had a plan. He already had a move. He had his next move. He had arranged, for his 10 bhaktas, young men that he had brought to the Radha Damodar Sankirtan party, young men, brahmacharis, and he had them all waiting outside with a rose. So he mentions, Prabhupada, there are results. And Prabhupada quickly, show me the results. So outside, he went outside. Prabhupada demanded, show me the results. Immediately I asked to be excused for a moment, ran down the stairs to my waiting bhaktas. I told them to follow quickly, that Prabhupada was eager to see them. And dashed up the stairs again. With the door open, I ushered them into Prabhupada's room. One by one they entered, each handing His Divine Grace a long-stemmed red rose before offering full obeising seats in front of his desk. Srila Prabhupada beamed, his pleasure increasing as each of the 10 new men came before him. This is really preaching. Srila Prabhupada gave me a look of complete satisfaction. This is the right field for you. Keep at this and make hundreds and hundreds of devotees. Prabhupada blessed. It is interesting, such a disciple, that he can debate and defeat. And Prabhupada changed his mind. Such a disciple, such a spiritual leader, such a treasure to have in our movement, such a treasure to have his association in our life. Now you're all very fortunate to have taken Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada speaking to his voice. You follow HHTamal Maharaj. He is my senior disciple. I have trained him in all respects, so learn everything from him. On the last visit to Mayapur, Srila Gurudev, at that time actually there were 20 or more, 25 devotees who had come from Taiwan. And after many years, of struggling and preaching in Taiwan, all of a sudden they had 15, 20 devotees who wanted to take initiation. The decades, there were hardly any devotees taking initiation. And come to Mayapur. And Maharaj, His Holiness, gave initiation. So in the morning he was giving a separate class, a special class with Janava. Mataji was translating into Chinese in his room during the Bhagavatam class time. I was also attending those Nectar of Instruction classes. And so I'd like to share the fact that I felt that it is very significant that the last public lecture that Srila Gurudev gave, the last public lecture, was preaching to the support, was furthering the China mission, and the topic was text 8 of Sri Upadeshamrit by Rupa Goswami, which describes the Upadesh Sharam, the conclusion of all instructions, is Brajantishte, that one should remain in Vrindavan and remember the transcendental divine pastimes of the divine couple and chant the holy name. It's text 8 of Upadeshamrita, the Upadesh Sharam, the ultimate instruction. And giving that class, and in that class His Holiness spoke how Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj and Srila Gorgasho Das Babaji Maharaj, eminent acharyas in the Gaudiya line, were doing bhajan in Brajabhumi, Sri Vrindavan Dham at Radha Kund, and then they came to Mayapur, to reside in Mayapur, to enter more deeply into Vrindavan. And they remained, Gorgasho Das Babaji Maharaj remained in the Brajabhag in Mayapur, in Samadhi. And that was the last philosophical point that Srila Gurudev made. And then he was leaving that morning, the next morning he was leaving for Vrindavan. And now he is in Samadhi in Mayapur. His Holiness HHTamalKrishnaGoswami Gurudev Shubha Tiruba Titi Mahamahotshav Ki Shamaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shishi Nitai Gaur Shita Nata Prama